Things may seem quiet out there, but I promise you it is misleading. The conflict between the United States and China is very real, and we are seeing this take place in major domains out there. Now, if you're not familiar with domains, we'll walk through just a kind of a brief idea of how China is framing this conflict with the United States. Whereas the United States is like, we're either at war or we're not at war. But we don't really see so much gray zone. China sees it all in sorts of spectrum of gray. They are at war with us, but they're not in a military conflict with us just yet. But they are ramping up their activities across the board on cyber warfare, spying. They've just tried to get a Taiwanese man to defect for 15 million US dollars. That's a lot of money, and he was going to do it. And that is one of the things that we're seeing out there, is that China is waging economic, psychological, and all sorts of warfare against the United States as well as our allies. We're going to dive into some of what they're doing so that you can kind of see what's happening. When you can see the big picture, you will see more of these dots falling into place, and it is very concerning. Let's jump into it. Welcome to the Poplar Report. I'm Steve Poplar. I'm an accountant by trade, and I keep an eye on China, 2 eyes on China, because it needs it. China is the biggest peer-level threat that the United States has. China now has a bigger navy than the U.S., and it's even worse than that. I keep saying this, and military people are saying it too, that in a major conflict between the United States and China, there's a very real possibility that China will defeat the United States. And they are constantly ramping up their production and their capacity to wage war against the United States, so that becomes more and more of a certainty. Right now, it's up for grabs. Depends on where it's fought. If we fight it off the coast of California, the United States will win. If we fight it off the coast of Taiwan, China will probably win. And you may get a little uncomfortable that I just said it just flat out, that that's just the way it is. China would probably win in a fight around Taiwan. Military people have been saying that for years, that we're there now, that China would probably win. And they know it. They know that they have us over a barrel. And now they're just twisting the screws. So, but they're not going into a military conflict right now. I think that, like I said, I think that will happen in the next few months. After the Taiwanese elections in January, I think that if they don't go China's way, I think China will seriously think about implementing a blockade around Taiwan. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But first off, right now, China has been investing heavily into the Navy. They realize that they must become a major sea power. They're kind of boxed in from land. I mean, they got Mongolia and Siberia to the north. I mean, you could invade through there, but what is there to take, right? You go to the west and you start looking at, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan. You got mountains. You got really bad logistics. And once again, what are you really going to take? You look to the south and they have a wall of mountains that would be very difficult to get into, and trying to invade India, not such a great idea. I mean, taking some scraps of land here and there, okay. But where they see the most potential and the most power out there is going to be out at sea. They need to get their ships to Africa. They need to be able to get control the choke points between China and Africa and world trade. This is where it's all about. And that's why they're developing their Navy like nobody's business. China's naval production capacity for producing new Navy ships is 200 times the United States capacity. So for every warship that the United States rolls off the dry docks into the water, China could produce 200. And that sounds bad, but I promise you, it's even worse than you think. China operates 860,000 fishing vessels. These are not military vessels, these are fishing vessels. They have way more cargo ships than the United States does. And many of these civilian ships have been brought into what's called the maritime militia. What happens is that they're doing business, but then they get paid by the Chinese Communist Party to come in with their crew and to be trained by Chinese Navy. The Chinese Navy and Chinese Coast Guard come in and train them how to do surveillance, how to do border patrol actions, teach them how to use their ships as weapons. And they have at their disposal a significant portion of these fishing vessels and the cargo ships. We've already seen them test and deploy weapon systems that are disguised as cargo containers. These are missile batteries, the K Club. It's a cargo container that suddenly opens up and out comes anti-ship missiles. So you see those cargo ships go by and you go, it's just a cargo ship, until it starts launching ship-to-ship missiles at you. And you didn't expect it. What's more is that it's a self-contained unit. It's in a shipping container. They can take a shipping container and they can put it on a fishing vessel. A modular weapon system, they can turn any one of those 860,000 fishing vessels that can take a cargo container, they can turn that ship into a missile battery. That's kind of concerning. If China were to mobilize its 860,000 fishing vessels against the United States Navy, I don't think we have that many anti-ship missiles. Let's just be honest. I don't think we have that many anti-ship missiles. If they disguise some of their ships, if they put weapons systems on some of their fishing vessels, how do we know which ones? Maybe they put a bunch of empty shipping containers on a bunch of other ships just to confuse us. And so we're looking at hundreds of thousands of fishing vessels that have cargo containers on them. Some of them have missile batteries and some of them just have a cargo container. What happens when you sink the wrong one? Well, they just had cheap plastic trinkets that were going to get delivered in the Philippines or something like that. Now you've just committed a war crime. But how do you tell the difference? These gray zone tactics that they're using are things that we're just not prepared to deal with. And they're continuing this fight on levels of spying. Now, there was a survey just done by the CIS where they basically did a public, went through public records of news stories and that kind of thing. 224 verified accounts of Chinese spying that have, generally speaking, are court cases, that type of thing. Since 2000, the year 2000 through the beginning of this year, 224 publicly disclosed in articles written kind of thing about Chinese spying. This is not to count the 1,200 court cases by U.S. companies against China for stealing their intellectual property. 1,200 court cases. That's not like a few. That's not like happenstance. That is a pattern. Of the 224 espionage attacks against the United States military and political, against the government, essentially. These are mostly spies. 69% of them happened after President Xi has taken office. Is ramping up in recent years. 46% of the incidents were cyber attacks launched by Chinese state government entities. They've hacked Lockheed Martin multiple times, NASA. They've hacked most of our government contractors out there. All of our state secrets, all of our military secrets. I mean, it's not any wonder why Chinese keep rolling stuff off the production line militarily that looks an awful lot like the United States versions. Because they're literally just stealing our designs. They're stealing our research, they're stealing our patents and all this kind of stuff like that when it comes to military materials. And that's not to count the many, many, many incidents of Chinese citizens trying to steal or to take out of country technologies and other goods that were banned, smuggled controlled goods, basically like rocket parts and other things that they can't just look up on the internet because they have to look at how are these parts being manufactured. And they actually need the parts. And so they're trying to smuggle these parts out. 49% of these 224 documented cases of spying were conducted by Chinese government officials or military officials. 49% of these spying people arrested and charged with crimes were actually conducted by not just random people, but by actual Chinese government. Like, you know that they were under orders. Their attempts to infiltrate and steal everything that's not nailed down, idea-wise, information-wise, research-wise, has put us now at a disadvantage to the Chinese. Not only do they have all of the information on how to build the weapons systems that we have, but they also know inside and out how all of our weapon systems work. And United States spying into China is not going so well. China has kicked out most of the Americans out of the country. Most of the Westerners are out of the country now. They have waged a campaign to root out spies from China. Basically, what you normally have is U.S. Either officials, diplomats, trying to recruit like native or the people of the country to defect, right? You meet with them and you try to convince them to sell the state secrets to you as the government official, and then you say, I'm just a diplomat. Well, China has waged a crazy Cold War style campaign to make sure that we cannot contact Chinese officials. And a lot of times what would happen is there would be the non-cover or the non-official folks who are there working as businessmen or whatever, doing something that's not as a diplomat, that gives you a freer hand to try to recruit people to turn against their country and sell state secrets. So China has full control of their internet. Everything that goes inside and outside the Chinese internet from the outside goes through the Great Firewall, as they call it. They control all the access points to their internet, and they are constantly watching it for any kind of foreign intrusions or foreign information moving back and forth. They are constantly watching all of their citizens, and I can't express how much they are setting themselves up for World War III. They control their internet. They're controlling their people. They're controlling. They're spying on us at the same time, making it very difficult for the United States to spy on them. They have their maritime militia that is going to make World War III very, very difficult in the United States. They have vastly superior cargo capacity. They can move stuff around the world very easily. They can move troops. They can move equipment. All these things. Their helicopter fleet is growing rapidly. And that's incidentally what the Taiwanese man was offered $15 million for, was to fly his Chinook helicopter and land it on a Chinese carrier. He was basically supposed to sell the Chinook helicopter for $15 million. So the Chinese could then disassemble the Chinook helicopter, and they already have all the technical drawings of what it entails, but they don't actually have one to take apart, to fly around, and they're trying to get their heavy lift helicopters to be as effective or more effective than the United States variations. This is so very concerning on so many different levels. And the U.S. military, every time they war game out a conflict between the United States and China, recently, every single time China has won. And that's because they can use these these new strategies, these new tactics. They have all these land-based missiles that can attack our ships. And they're not like the land-based missiles that the Yemenis are throwing at cargo ships over there. The Chinese variants are built on U.S. designs. We have much to be concerned about. If we're going to defend Taiwan, it's going to be very, very difficult, if not just hopeless. And so we have to seriously consider what a major power struggle against China will look like. Because sooner or later, we're probably going to come in conflict with them. As the United States is trying to rule the entire world, and China is not really cool with that anymore, we're going to see a major conflict blow up. And we see the axis of power of China, Russia, Iran, and other countries that are very much ramping up for war against the United States. World War III is not going to go the way we think it is. I think that we are probably going to lose it, depending on how it shakes out. But we're already starting out down significantly. And I don't think many people realize that. World War III is coming our way, and it's going to get really, really ugly, folks. China is already conducting this shadow war against us, and there is more to come. All right, friends. Well, thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out another video from the channel, there's one right up here. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you guys later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report.